Hi everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits and happy Hanukkah! Tonight is the first night of Hanukkah 2018 and we are celebrating with a different dyeing video every night. Some of you may have purchased a sampler from the ChemKnits Creations shop, and so this video will correspond to your gift from night one. All Jewish holidays, including Hanukkah, start at sundown. And so I thought it would be really fun to kick off this first episode by creating a sunset colorway and doing this with some sun dyeing. So today I am going to dye some Knit Picks Paragon yarn in some beautiful warm tones of yellow, pinks, and oranges. And I'm going to use the heat from the sun to set the color on our yarn. Paragon is a really delightful yarn with a beautiful drape. It is 50% merino, 25% alpaca, and 25% mulberry silk. For the dye, we are going to use the Wilton Color Right system. This is some really concentrated liquid food coloring and gives really bright colors. And the colors I'm going to play with are the base red, pink, orange, and yellow. I have 3 1-quart jars. Each of them will fit 100 grams of yarn. And one of the things I'm curious about is how similar will the colorways be if I use the same amount of dye and the same approximate amount of placement of it. Now, Paragon will absorb color a lot slower than the superwash wool nylon blend sock yarns that I use a lot. Typically, anything with alpaca or silk needs a little more acid and time to absorb the color. So we could end up with a completely orange colorway, but I'm hoping that by layering the tones, we will still have some pink and orange in there as well. Or sorry, yellow and orange in there as well. To keep the acid consistent, or relatively consistent, between the 3 containers, I have brought out a container with 8 cups of water, and I'm going to add, I think, 5 tablespoons. And add 5 tablespoons of white vinegar. This is higher acid than I normally would use for some of the yarns that I use very frequently, but I know from experience that these yarns require more acid and more time, so let's just start off with some higher acid. The yarns are completely dry at this stage. I have not pre-soaked them, but I'm going to start by placing one end of the yarn into the jar. You could add your dye directly to the bottom with some water, but I think I want to add the first drops onto the bottom of the yarn. Since I know that the dye will sink towards the bottom, this layering might help it not get too intense at the bottom. Reds tend to strike faster than yellows, so I'm going to start with the reds at the bottom, then some pink, orange, and then the yellow on the very top. Okay, so to start, I'm going to use just 1 drop of the base red, and I'm aiming to get it to fall approximately towards the bottom. You can see some of it hit the side. It was not even throughout all of them, but I did my best. And now I can add a little more yarn. And we're going to do 3 drops of pink. Whoops. Maybe 4 drops of pink. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, that one might have a little extra. You'll see that we will have some differences, even with the same technique. And smearing along the side. I think that's okay. I'm wearing gloves. I'm going to put some more of this in. I'm wearing gloves just so that way I do not dye my fingers in addition to the yarn. Okay, so this time, not sure if you can see, I've created a little well there. And wiping my finger on some of the weeds in my yard, I'm going to add into the center portion 1, 2, 3 drops of orange. On all 3. So far, that's about 3 plus 4 plus 1, about 8 drops of food coloring on each of them. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of the yarn. You can see that the yarn does comfortably fit within the jar, and it's pretty compact, and so I think that that will affect the way that the colors spread out. Of course, we still have to add water, and we need to add our yellow. Let's go ahead and do 2, started with 3 drops of yellow on each of these jars. And now I'm going to start adding water. Now I'm not sure how absorbent this particular yarn is. But you can see, oh, that yellow is just going down. You see the way it's like a cocktail. So I'm going to have to be slowly adding, I guess, about a cup of water at a time. To each of our skeins of yarn. Now again, it's possible all the color is just going to run straight to the bottom, since I intentionally did not pre-soak the yarn, and so it might not be super absorbent, but we can always add, well, I guess yellow is the one color that I have the least of, but we can always add some more yellow at the end if we need to, if it all seems to run down towards the bottom, which it very well might. So I'm not at this point measuring the amount of water that I'm adding to each of them. I'm just adding what I think it can hold. Whew. And I think it's like 8 or 8:30 a.m. and it is already hot out here. I'm just pressing it down. Don't want the yarn to float. This is cool. It's probably advisable to start with pre-soaking your yarn, but I sort of wanted to see what would happen with this blend. And the way that those colors are going towards the bottom are so cool. I definitely think I'm going to add some more yellow towards this top portion. And if I need to, I can get some more water. I think 1 quart is about 4 cups of water. The nice thing is that we could end up with some really beautiful uneven absorption of color in here, which I think would be really, really, really fun. Let's see how we're doing. We might be pretty good. Yeah, but all those drops definitely did rinse down. That is so, so, so fun. Okay, I want to go ahead and add a tiny bit more yellow to the top. I love, love, love the sunset going on and the hints of pink, but uh-oh. Well, I might have killed my yellow. So that's approximately 2 drops to the top of each, and the yellow is now tapped. Let's add a tiny bit of water on top. And I can check on this in a little bit to see if we need to add some more water. But now I am going to go ahead and cover this up. I guess I'm first dissolving the yellow a bit around here, which is also letting me check the water level a bit. Does it need? I think I do need to go get a little more water. I will be right back. The last thing to consider is that some red number 3s, which is the only ingredient in the pink that I added today, but the red number 3s can bleach in direct sunlight and fade. And so I think that one of the things I'm really curious about is whether we'll observe this. Will we still see pink in the end? I have had success with the longevity of food coloring, great success with the longevity, as long as you don't leave it, say, on a windowsill for indirect sunlight for months on end. So, okay, I think those water levels are pretty good. So I've been very, very happy with it, but that's just something to note. Another thing to note is that the temperatures of this are really, really low. So one thing you might want to do after letting the sun set the color, because the sun and the jars are going to determine the pattern of the yarn, of the color on the yarn, we may decide to microwave it after we have removed it. But now I'm going to go transfer these to the first sunny spot. Our 3 jars are now in direct sunlight. It is 8:30 a.m. and already humid and super, super, super hot. I'll check in on this a few times throughout the day, but and I'll check in if I'm going to move them to a new location. But for now, we can see some bright spots of pink and red on the outside. So one of our questions is, will this pink disappear? Let's see what happens. It has been about 3 hours now, and the pink is going away a little bit, but that's because the reds and oranges are spreading. So this is definitely not looking bleached or less pink as much as the reds have spread up, and that's why we're seeing less of the pink. If you look at the shady side, you can see some more of the yellow. I have now relocated the jars back onto my table because it's in full sunlight again, and yeah, I'll leave them here for a couple more hours until it starts to get shady on the patio, and then I'll move them into the garden. But I do think that this whole sunrise effect is just really, really beautiful, and I am so excited to take the yarn out and see what it looks like. It is now about 2:30 in the afternoon, and it is humid and balmy and only partly sunny. I think that my jars are now in a shade zone, so I'm going to move them to a place that has more sun. But I also think that it's about to rain. Let me show you what the sky looks like. The sky is no longer clear and it is looking like it could rain. I don't know if there's less pink than the last update, but there's still not a ton of pink. There's a ton of red though. So I think that it's not that the pink has faded. I think it's more that the reds have taken over, at least on that side. As we go around, we have a little more of the yellow and some white areas, and I am just really, really excited to open these up. But I still need to wait a bit longer. Since it is still super, super hot out, even without a lot of direct sunlight, I'm still gonna leave these outside. I just heard some thunder, and even if it rains, these are sealed, so it's okay to leave them outside. And there's not really any tree branches or anything over here that would fall on them or anything like that. But I am going to let our beautiful sunset hang out here for a while to give the yarn a little more time to absorb the dye. It's possible that it's all absorbed already. We won't know until I open them up and check, but I'm going to let them, I'll wait until sundown to bring them in and open them up. It's 3:20 and see that orange spot? That's my jars in the backyard. But you can't see out the window because it is pouring. I'll bring the jars in later tonight. It's still super hot out, so I think there is still some benefit to remaining outside. The rain has stopped and the sun is setting outside and in our yarn. So I am going to bring these inside and soon we'll open them up to take a look. It's night and it's pouring and thundering, but let's go ahead and open up our first jar. I am really, really, really curious if the water has cleared. And actually, it does look like it has cleared. Look at my fingers sort of going into that water. And okay, there is some color down there, but all things considered, that is not very much color. Let's take a look at our yarn. Yeah, that is barely even one drop of color. Carefully look for the tie to open this up, but this is a beautiful, beautiful sunset yarn. I'm not seeing, trying to look, I mean, I guess if I look at the jar, I just see a tiny bit of pink, but I think most of that pink, I don't know if any of it blanched. There is some paler section around there, but I think that whatever this red is or the orange, it's sort of blended together. But this is beautiful. Let me just squeeze out this excess water. Okay. This is really, really pale. I am gonna go ahead and start washing this. I'm gonna go ahead and rinse them one at a time. I'm expecting there will be some bleeding, but let's move into the sink. I had this yarn outside all day long, and that length of time probably was not necessary. I probably could get away with a shorter period of time, but I do know that this yarn does absorb dye slower than, say, a superwash yarn, a superwash soft yarn. So therefore, I wanted to give it plenty of time. But I am curious, and I think I'd like to, in the future, set up some experiments, sort of like time points, where I can stop them at various times. But we have a tiny amount of bleeding. I'm going to go ahead and use just a little bit. I put a little bit on my finger and then sort of add it into the yarn in that way. Sometimes adding the soap does cause more of the colors to come out. I am not surprised that we're seeing reds here. We had some high acid here, and the red number 3, which is, some of it is in the base red that we added at the bottom, but the pink is all red number 3. I'm trying to see if I really see the pink anywhere. Not really. I'm wondering if some of that pink just crashed out because of the high acid or what. But anyway, I am going to carefully wash this until the water runs clear, and then I will hang it up to dry. And I think it's looking a little darker to me in person than it is on camera. That's definitely some bleeding. I'm using cool water for these rinses, and if I need to, I could let it soak for a bit. But I am really happy with this, and I'm not wearing gloves or anything, and I'm not having any color rub off on my hands. And that is the biggest reason why we rinse our yarn. Multiple rinses later, and I'm still getting this pinkish runoff. We still got these great reds and oranges. I'm not sure. It's hard for me to know if it's looking a little less red. I think it's looking a little less pink on camera than it does in person. But let's pull out the other 2 fresh from the jar and we'll compare them. Okay, here's jar number 2. So far this one actually looks a bit clearer than the last one did, but let's squeeze out. Yeah, that actually does look clearer than the first one. Oh, interesting. But color-wise, here's the one that I haven't washed, and here's the one that I've been washing. So I've got bright yellows in both of them, still have some of those pinks and stuff, so I think the colors are looking pretty consistent so far. This is jar number 3. Okay, this one has a bit more color in it than jar number 2 did. For comparison, this one was jar number 2. It's a lot paler. But hopefully set those aside. Yeah, the one it's squeezing out now looks clearish. So it'll be curious to see. I definitely see some reddish pinks in here. And okay, this time for when I'm just touching, I definitely did get some pink on my hands. Put these reddish parts under the water to start rinsing. So I wanted to take a break from the first one, and I decided to take a tissue, wrap it around, and just squeeze to see. And what I see on the tissue is not a good sign. If there was still some bleeding left, yes, we might expect to see some pink, but this is the dye coming off sort of in a pattern like the color. So I think I'm going to take some steps to try to set this color a little more. I've got water in my basin. I'm going to do 1, 2 healthy splashes of vinegar. And now I am going to dunk my 3 skeins of yarns in. And ironically, okay, so we've got this heavy vinegar water, and now I'm not really seeing any bleeding. Funny. Huh. Isn't that funny? I thought I was going to need to go and heat it, but we just pop this in with a bunch of vinegar, and this had been bleeding pink, and I am not seeing any color coming out. Man, I was all prepared to dunk this yarn into the vinegar bath and then go put it on some plastic wrap and pop it in the microwave. But as soon as I pop this into this vinegar water, and that's had a lot of vinegar in it, I am not seeing any more bleeding. That just completely stopped it. So maybe the lesson, I'm just going to kind of leave this in here for a little bit, but maybe the lesson is that you need to, after it comes out of the jar, especially if your yarn was not initially pre-soaked in vinegar, maybe it needs to just go into a vinegar bath to just help that last little bit just stick. I mean, these reds usually will stick with almost no heat. And so, wow, 2 huge splashes of vinegar, some water, and zoop, that sucked it right up. I'm gonna let this sit in here for about 10 minutes and then we'll try rinsing and neutralizing it again and see what happens. First, let's do another tissue test. And yeah, that's not coming off anymore. Okay, it has been 10 minutes and goodness me, that water is clear. I could have saved myself some heartache. Now I need to rinse out the vinegar. I may or may not try a little more soap, but first let's just fill the basin with water and see if we still have no more bleeding. This is why I should always listen to my own advice that I give to people. And it is remarkable. All right. I don't really need soap at this point, but I'm adding a tiny bit of dish soap just for my own personal curiosity, seeing if this is in fact still clear. Yep, we're clear. All right, I am now going to rinse out the soap, squeeze out some of the water, and hang this up to dry. Hooray, hooray, hooray! Here are the finished 3 skeins of yarn that we dyed with food coloring, and then we used the heat from the sun to set the color. I probably should have added a little more vinegar to the jars from the get-go, because as you saw, we had lots and lots of bleeding, and then when I added a lot more vinegar, zoop, the color finally stopped leaking out. So if I had either added a little more vinegar at the very beginning, or if I had added a little more vinegar immediately after removing the yarn from our mason jars, maybe the final colors would have been a little brighter. However, I still think that we achieved a really, really stunning sunset. The Paragon yarn base that we started with is 50% merino, 25% alpaca, and 25% silk. And I know from the past that this does require more acid and a bit more time to absorb color than, say, if we were using a superwash merino blend. We used 3 different jars and we added the dye, tried to add it similarly, but in 3 different ways. But the colors are actually remarkably similar. They are not identical, so if all 3 of these skeins were going to be used in one project, you might want to alternate every couple of rows so that way there wasn't a big difference when you switched skeins. But considering that, you know, these were added, there was a lot of different variables in the way that these were added to the jars, I am really, really happy calling these all the same colorway. We put these colors in the sun and we had red number 40 and red number 3 in there. In addition to 2 different yellows. We used a mixture of pink, red, orange, and yellow. And it's hard to say if any of the pink bleached. You can see very pale pink in some of these palest areas of the yarn. But I don't know if that is a result of there being some pink that might have faded, or all the yarn absorbing some of the pink that had been rinsing out while the yarn was bleeding. So these are both definitely possibilities. Either way, there's no question that there are reds left in this yarn, and this was left in direct sunlight all day. I mean, even when we were looking at the jar itself, you could still see the reds and pinks on the side of the jar. It seemed like the pink that we could see eventually got overtaken by some of the reds, which I think also made it a little bit harder to tell. But I definitely see some streaks of the more pink tone in some of these center areas. I am thrilled that the colors spread out and that we have color basically all over the entire skein of yarn. Yes, there's some lighter patches, but this really invokes an image of like a cloudy sunset where you see the bright oranges and pinks sort of reflecting off the edges of the clouds that sort of breaks up these beautiful hues from the setting sun. I want to zoom in a bit so you can really appreciate the way that these colors sort of blended together. Tonight's sunset and sunset yarn kicks off the first night of Hanukkah 2018 and the 2018 ChemKnits Chanukah special. Some of you might have a mini skein sampler, and so you are unwrapping this yarn yourself, and you can touch and feel and see and play with these colors on your own. I would love to hear what you think about these colors and your yarn, whether you're a viewer watching from home or if you purchased the sampler and so you're playing with the mini skein as you've been watching this episode. Whatever the season where you are when you are watching this video, there are different ways that you can use the weather to supplement your dyeing process. Whether in the summer you're going to use the heat of the sun, or in the winter you pick up some snow and use that as a way to let the colors spread out onto your yarn. There are just many fun ways that you can bring the outside into your dyeing process. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and I would like to wish all of you, no matter what holidays you observe or celebrate, a very happy Hanukkah and happy holidays. This series of videos is my gift to all of you, so we can have a little something extra an extra color to enjoy as we go into continue the holiday season. Make sure you check back every night of Hanukkah for a new video featuring a different yarn base. That's right, I'm going to be dyeing 8 different yarn bases in 8 different ways this week. And I can't wait for you to see what else I've created. Don't forget to subscribe to the ChemKnits Tutorials YouTube channel. And thank you so much for watching.